a chilly morning, so I hope you are all staying safe and warm. That's one of the nice things, I guess, about having a virtual meeting is that you can join us in the comfort of your home or your office, and you don't need to go out. So, I have kind of a love-hate relationship with virtual meetings. I've actually been doing them for quite some time. And part of the reason for that is our media production company serves clients who are really all over the country and frankly, all over the world sometimes. So we're actually used to doing a lot of business virtually. Long before the pandemic came about, we had figured out we needed to be able to communicate this way with our customers. I will say that I'm doing a lot more of them now. And in fact, there was one day, and you can kind of raise your hands if you agree with me, I think I had 7 back-to-back virtual meetings. Anybody got that? And it's exhausting. I will tell you, it can be absolutely exhausting because it's not like being in a room with people. So I've entitled this, Zoom Doom. I'm not against Zoom, but I do think that there are some things that we really do need to do if we are in fact going to have great virtual meetings. So I want to kind of jump in and just share with you a little bit of an introduction about some of the things that we have done over the last year. And so here's a little bit of a sample. What I think you can see is that organizations, and I do mean all kinds of different organizations, are doing virtual meetings, from nonprofits to schools to corporations, and a lot of them fail. And I thought this might be an appropriate image to show you given what our weather is like in Michigan today. So the question is, why do virtual events fail? And the answer isn't really all that complicated. The answer is that most people try to do a virtual event in the exact same way that they do a face-to-face event. And the problem is it doesn't translate well. If you're in a room with someone, you can grab their attention. You take that same thing and you try to do it virtually, and honestly, it's boring. And so that's why we have to think about virtual events in a very different way. And I'm going to share with you today some ideas about how to do that. So let's say it's showtime. I want you to start to think about making your virtual event like a TV show. Think like a producer. Think like someone who's going to create something that is going to be a real wow and that people are going to see on TV. And who knows, you might even win an Emmy. So I want you to really set your sights on doing something that's really exciting. Here's an open to a show that I think if you listen carefully, you'll understand exactly what I mean when I say it's showtime.
Welcome to Showtime at the Apollo, everybody. This is the stage where legends are made. It's real simple. Be great, and the audience will let you know. It's showtime.
So, what did he say? Be great, and the audience will let you know. And that's what I want you to start to think about. So let's jump into the content here. Let's first look at what is it that you are sharing in your virtual meeting. Are you sharing something that is old news? Are you sharing something that everybody already knows? Because if you are, there's nothing exciting. Why are you having the meeting? A lot of times people will share what I'm going to call boring content. And by that, what I mean is it's content that doesn't necessarily translate well into the virtual arena. So what would that be? It would be things like complicated financials. It's very hard to put some of those things into a virtual meeting. It's something that requires a lot of detailed step-by-step. That sometimes can be really boring. A lot of times what people will do is they'll recycle information. It's something that maybe you've already shared, but you just kind of pull a slide deck out and you rework it a little and you add a little something new, but it really isn't very fresh. I like to say I listen to a lot of virtual meetings and it's a lot of blah, 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 blah. And what happens? Before you know it, people are tuning out. What are they doing? They're checking their email. They're on their cell phone. And then all of a sudden it hits them. They are not paying attention. So think about the content that you are sharing. And I want you to think about a virtual meeting as a creation. You are going to create something. Maybe it's a webinar. There's a lot of those right now where you have a presenter like this, and there's some content. A lot of times virtual meetings are now becoming trade shows. So because people can't go to a convention center or you're limited by the number of things, there are actually platforms where you can do a digital trade show. My first experience with this was, I'm going to say maybe 4 or 5 years ago, when Siemens, which is a large customer of ours, because their vendors were from all over the world, they actually did a digital trade show. And so we created a booth, a background where people would come in and they would talk to us about what we could do, and we would show them things just as if we were on a trade show floor. That might be an option for some of you who have products that you're selling or services that you're selling. Sometimes it's just a conference. And by that, what I'm talking about is there's a lot of content, there's a lot of breakout rooms. We have done in this last year, I can't tell you how many award shows, and those are really interesting because before there was the excitement of people would go somewhere and they'd get up on stage and they would get their award, and now they can't do that. So how do you make an award show that's interesting? There's also meetups for fun. And I will tell you an organization that's been doing this in our state, Small Business Association of Michigan. They are having these really fun kind of after hours meetings where there might be a little bit of content that they're going to share, but it's really more an opportunity for people to get together, share a beverage, talk to each other, no real agenda. And then training has become a big thing even before the pandemic. Part of the reason for that is the cost of travel is very expensive. And so, you know, if you have to send a trainer out to someone, that can be, you know, expensive, time consuming. And maybe you go out and you train people, and the next week or month, more people come into your organization, a trainer has to go back out. So there's some really good examples of virtual training or learning management platforms that people have, which are essentially virtual meetings. So think about all of the things that you can create. And then you have to think about, okay, how do I make it different than what someone else has? Well, the way you make it different is by, I call it spicing it up. And I'm going to let Janelle from our office kind of share with you a little bit more about that.
There are so many ways that you can spice up an event. One of the best is to share the spotlight, like Cynthia's doing right now. Did you know that virtual audiences lose attention after 10 minutes of listening to the same speaker? That's why you really need to plan your content and who will deliver it. Do you have a big announcement, a special offer, or something else that's newsworthy? Maybe you want to do a fireside chat with an expert. It could be someone from your own organization or someone else who has a deep knowledge of the topic. Keep it casual and fun, no reading notes, just great conversation. And features can really be effective too. That can be a demonstration, a behind-the-scenes look at your business, or how you developed a product or service. The idea is to pack your event full of interesting content. One talking head is not very interesting, so get creative.
So what I will tell you is sharing the spotlight is something that is important. It's very difficult for one person to carry an event. And if you think about that, that stat, someone gets bored or loses attention after 10 minutes. That's why I'm trying to model for you some of the things that I want you to think about. Is there someone you can bring in to share the spotlight? Someone you could have a conversation with? Now, most people think that virtual events are all live. Not all of them are, nor should they be. So let's look at what are some of the pluses and the minuses of live versus packaged. The cool thing about a live event is it's very spontaneous. You know, there's all kinds of things happening. People can be chatting. It can be interactive. I'm not doing this today, but there's a lot of, you can take a poll where people answer a question. You can build some of that into it. But the question is it risky? And it can be risky to do a completely live event. There are all kinds of things that can happen. Audio can go bad. You can lose your internet. I was on an event recently where someone left their microphone open and the poor presenter, we heard an entire conversation from this woman with her husband who was going out to do something, and it interrupted the presenter. And that's the risk that you take when you do this. So there's good and bad things about doing something live. Sometimes events look like they're live, but they're actually packaged. I'll give you an example. I did a Cisco chat about a month or two ago, and most of it was packaged. And that is to make sure that we stayed in the time frame. There were lots of different presenters, but then at the very end, there was a Q&A, and that was live. All right, but it was essentially packaged. So when you package something, what can you do? You can have more visuals to it. You can add video over the top. You can have presenters that maybe are not available while you're doing that live event. So now you can package them and bring them in. And the good news is you hit play and everything goes. Hopefully, you know, we do still live in a world where technology comes back and bites us every once in a while, and it happens to everyone. It even happens to professionals like me. But I want you to weigh, should something be live? Should it be packaged? Maybe it's a hybrid. Maybe there's some live, some packaged, which is what I'm doing today. So those are some of the things that you can think about when you're doing an event. All right, so let's look at what are some of the resources. And I really want to encourage you to do some homework. There is no one resource that works for everyone. Here I have a list of some things that you might want to think about. And I'm going to let Brian tell you a little bit more about resources and what you can consider as you're putting together your packaged event.
It takes a team to pull off a great virtual event. Well, that's why you need to do your homework. One place to do some comparisons of the different platforms is a site called Event Nation. The platform is important because all of them have different features and benefits. For example, some of them are much better if you want to be able to insert video and audio. Others have great opportunities for interactivity. Now, some let you customize the look and feel, while others make you fit into their format. If you're creating something beyond a simple webinar, you might also want to consider getting technical help for questions about bandwidth, your IT infrastructure, and the platforms. You also might want to think about working with a producer who can help with the content, video features, and more. Now, there are lots of resources to help with virtual meetings, so don't be afraid to ask for help. It can make the event stress-free for you and engaging for your audience.
So I want you to really think about the resources, and it's easy to get demos of the different resources. For example, we've been doing a lot with On24, and many corporations are using that because of the ability to customize. But if you go to their site, you can request a demo. They'll show you all the features, the benefits. Zoom is one that a lot of people are using and people feel comfortable with it. You can't do as much customization with Zoom, but people are very used to using it. So I want you to think about what is it that maybe you're going to do. And the other thing I will tell you is no matter what platform you use, it's really important that you do some pre-testing. So I'll let you in on a little secret. Today, Rosie and I got on a little bit early, and what did? We tested the videos, we tested the audio. You can't just assume that everything is going to work. So that pre-testing is important, and having a technical resource, and if you're at a certain level, having a producer, someone like a me, who would come in and say, here's some places where you could spice this up, you can add some things in. If it's a simple webinar, probably don't need it. But do you want to take it to the next level? If you do, I really want to encourage you to think about getting some assistance in doing that. One of the things that I shared early on was we've done some work with Catholic Central. And, we've done virtual events for them, whether they are fundraisers, and, people are worried about fundraisers because will they get the same, bang for the buck when you don't have a live event? They've been very successful doing that, but there's a lot of production value that goes into it. So take a look at what the resources are. Don't be afraid to ask questions. People will talk to you. They'll tell you, here's the pros and the cons. All right. So now let's look at something that I really think has become not just an issue with virtual events, but frankly with everything. This whole idea of security. Is it safe? And there are many examples of people who have been hacked while they're doing a virtual event. Someone has come in and disrupted it. And often what I hear from people is, well, I didn't think that I needed to worry about the security. I thought maybe the platform that I was using was securing it. That can be true, and the platforms have become very good at it, but you shouldn't just rely on them. Ask questions about it. I will tell you that some of my corporate clients have a preferred platform, and they will not let you use another platform because they don't trust the security on it. So I think you want to really think about how secure is it. One way that you can ensure some level of security is don't just throw something out there. Make people register. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One, it lets you know who your audience is going to be, lets you know how many people, but it also gives you a chance to send them a unique link so that they click on that link, and that is another level of added security. We are big on passwords. I'll share a little secret with you. I hate passwords. I can never remember the passwords. I know everybody does this. So the folks here at my office have said, we like LastPass, and I have gotten used to using it. Why? Because it generates a secure password for you. You don't need to worry about remembering it. Now you have 20 or 30 or however many sites you go to, but all you have to remember is one password, your master password, and then you go into your vault. So think about if you're doing a virtual event, you don't want people to disrupt it. You also want people to feel secure in attending it. So, the question of is it safe is something you need to address. So let's look at success. And by success, what I want to talk about is, how do you know you've had success? Is it that you get a lot of people to register? Is it that you've done a great show and people are talking about you afterwards? Is it that people are requesting more information from you after you have done this? Let's think about what is it that is your measure of success? And for everyone, that will be different. For some people, it's I just got my word out and I feel like people listened and I got a couple of people tweeting. By the way, feel free to tweet right now if you'd like to about this. But, success is really determined by what the goal is of the virtual event. So I'm going to tell you a little story about Cisco Canada. So Cisco Canada had what they call their global awards. And they, this is a big thing, recognizing people, telling people they've done a great job, sharing the stories of these people. Well, all of a sudden, this big, huge event that they did, they had to take virtually. And so they came to us and they had a wonderful theme. And we were kind of like, it was like a superhero theme, which is always fun because you can do a lot of things with it. So they developed a theme. They then took that theme and they carried it throughout their virtual event. So what we did was we did features on every one of the people that were being honored. And we wrote the features to be stories about what they had done that had been like superhero style. So I'm going to just share with you one of the pieces from Cisco Canada. And this was the open.
This one. Hey Sonia, welcome. Welcome, hey. Are you excited of being here?
Oh, I'm so excited.
Cool. That way, please. Welcome. Welcome. That way. Are you excited to be here?
I am thrilled to leave my house and see all you wonderful people.
So what we did was we created a show open, and we did the whole thing themed like you were going to a drive-in. And then we found a drive-in and we had some people, because we had to worry about security and safety and people couldn't congregate. So this whole thing was created as though people, while they were sitting in their home, were at a drive-in movie. And it worked really well. And if you look here, you see a screen there. What we did was we inserted all of the videos on the screen and went into them. So it had this really fun look and feel. We also even had a segment where we, if you go to the movies, what happens? You go get popcorn. So we had a concession break and we, encouraged people, go to your kitchens and pop the popcorn. And so it was just kind of a fun way that we could create something that made people feel like they were still being honored, but also that they were doing it in a safe way. So that was, and they had huge success with this event. Don't know if we'll do it again next year. Hopefully it will be live, but that's one sample of thinking about a theme, creating a look and a feel, and then carrying it through. So Siemens Factory Automation had a sales meeting. And one of the things that they were trying to do is get away from what Janelle was talking about, which is that talking head. And so they had presenters, but they said, okay, what can we do that will make this feel more fun and also encourage participation? So a lot of meetings today start with what we will call a safety moment. And a safety moment is where you take some bit of content, whether it's in your regular life or on the plant floor or going to the office. And so we created a whole series of safety moments that they inserted into this live meeting. And this is an example.
Why do musicians always wear sunglasses? Is it to look cool? Maybe it's a fashion statement. Maybe, but there's a better reason. Stay tuned for our safety moment to find out.
Sunglasses help prevent certain eye diseases. For example, If you spend too much time in the sun without sunglasses, it can lead to cataracts or even worse things. Wear sunglasses with UV protection and keep your eyes healthier, longer.
Darling, are you protecting right?
Science is showing that glasses can also protect you from airborne illnesses like COVID. Even if you have 20/20 vision, you can buy a pair of glasses with no prescription to get that extra dose of protection.
Eye protection is always important.
Rock the glasses!
So what you can see is we added some fun. We added something rather than saying to people, well, it's really smart for you to like wear sunglasses. You need to wear your eye protection when you go into the plant. What do we do? Here's the other thing that's really fun about doing a virtual meeting like this and inserting some of this stuff. Think of all those people who contributed something. We put out a call and said, put on your favorite pair of sunglasses. And then we said to a couple of people, can you look like Elton John? Can you look like Taylor Swift? All of a sudden, what happens? People get excited about it. They contributed something. But here's the other thing that I think is super important. They got the chance to see themselves. And whenever people can see themselves in a virtual event, they feel like they're part of it. So I think, if you can think about what are the opportunities that you have, and maybe it's not a safety moment. Maybe it's you have a product that you are selling and you ask one or two of your customers to share something about why they love this product. Or maybe you ask someone who's manufacturing the product to talk about the care that they put into making that product. Now, all of a sudden, what have you done? You've personalized this and you've made this into something that really goes beyond just that talking head. So I've done a lot of webinars, and one of the things that I have tried to do is make them more visual. So for example, as you see this picture right over in here, I was doing a spoof on webinars, and I asked all of the folks in my office, what are some of the things you really hate about webinars? And then what we did is we actually acted out all of those things in a little vignette. And it was really simple to do. We basically got everybody on a Zoom call, we recorded it, and we did fun stuff like Brian, who's there, he was the leader. And what is he doing? He sees people are reading books or they're on their devices. And at one point, a cat walks in front, and I'm just all the fun things. And Brian goes, is anybody listening to me? And just as he says that, one of our employees pops in and goes, hey, I guess I'm late. I didn't realize that already had started. All the things that we can laugh at, but are real. So creating maybe a vignette would be one thing. I like to tell people that because webinars are visual to some degree, it's not like it's a podcast, right? You need to think about creating graphics. I want to give you just a little bit of a hint about the graphics. You'll notice as these are two examples. I was doing something about how do you make sure that people are engaged. And so I talked about distractions. Now, I could have written a whole lot of things about distractions. Instead, what I did was I visually showed things. If you're trying to avoid distractions, ask people to close their door. Make sure that people are not sitting near a window. Make sure that people know that you're going to take a bathroom break at a certain time. So so people don't leave you and then come back. This schedule a reminder. I was doing some tips about, okay, what can you do to ensure that people are going to be on the call when it's time? Scheduling a reminder that pops up is something. But if you look at these graphics, what I'm trying to visualize here is they're clean, they're simple. Why? Partially because some people might be watching your webinar on a phone or a tablet, and it's small, right? Now, some people might have a big screen, but what you want to do is you want to plan for the smallest device that someone is using. So the simpler that you make the graphics, the less text heavy, the better it will be. So webinars that I've done things about how to put together a better presentation, how to communicate technical information. I've done webinars on how to be a better presenter. We've done webinars on culture. So think about what are some of the things that you could offer. And I like to say, people have said to me, oh, well, I don't have any. I go, what? No, wait. Everyone has a sweet spot, a level of expertise that they might have. So you have to think about, what do you know that other people don't know? What do you do better than anyone else? Can you build some content around all of that? That's the sort of thing that I think you really need to think about. And webinars do not need to be long. If you look at some of the webinars that I have done, some of them are 15 to 20-minute modules, and I'll have people watch them in advance. And then I'll get on and do something like this where we just do Q&A. I've packaged it so people can look at it on their own time frame. They don't have to be on a webinar at 9 o'clock on a Wednesday morning. But then what we have is the ability to then get on and share some things that they're concerned about. So think about what it is, think about how you can offer it, think about how you are going to produce it, and what kind of graphic support are you going to have. And don't necessarily always think about it needs to be an hour. In fact, I tell people less is more. It's one of my basic rules. People have very busy lives. Screen time is difficult. So if you can give people some time back in their day, that can be really effective. I often will say, instead of planning a 1 hour, plan a 45-minute, and then give people the opportunity to ask questions or to go off and do something else and get a head start on their day. The other thing that I've noticed about webinars these days is so many of them are back to back to back. And so if you put some pad in there, you are much more likely then to get people who are going to be on time for the next one and more likely to, to stay on until the end. So those are some of the things. What I'd like to talk about now is some of the things that people don't always think about. Grow has an audience. It's a very specific audience, and that makes it easy for me to know a little bit about the people who are on. If you can do some homework ahead, I think that can be really effective, because I've done things like say to the people who are putting together the webinar, all right, are these business owners or are these people who work in the business? There's a difference if you're talking to a business owner or you're talking to an employee. I will often say, how much information do these people need about this topic? Do they have a cursory understanding of the topic? Is it brand new to them? That will help you understand whether or not you have to explain terminology that you might use. Knowing your audience is the key important thing, because you can't develop content if you don't have a good understanding of that audience. So I want you to think about, who's that audience? Now let's think about, when we talk about rich content, what does that mean? Well, rich content is something that you have, which is a deeper understanding. I'll give you an example. So we have suggested that you go to Event Nation. That's not something that I'm going to guess that you will find if you just go online and Google. I happen to have met the person virtually who started this business. I've had a number of conversations with her about what kind of content does she have? Who is she trying to help with platforms? So that's a tip that I can give to you, which is a little bit better than you just going best platforms for virtual events. Because what you're going to get there is not going to be curated content. So think about, how do you add richness to the content? The other thing that I think you want to look at is, what kind of variety can you put into a virtual event? So let's say you are doing an event on grow, as an example. What could we talk about? We could talk about the organization itself. We could talk about the programs. We could feature some of the people who are members, give them a 2-minute slot or a 90-second slot to talk about their business. We could go and offer some content that's a teaser about one of the benefits of working with Grow. So you have to start to think about, what are all of the things? We could share the story of a business owner who's just getting started. We could share the story of a business owner who is facing a challenge and how that person solved it. There's lots of content that you can create, but you have to really start thinking, kind of like a producer, what are the things people want to know? All right, then let's talk about visuals. I gave you a few tips about how to make them simple, but let's go beyond just slides that you would have. What else could we use for visuals? Can you take your iPhone out and shoot a demonstration of something? I'm going to tell you, if you do that, please put it on a tripod, get a little, so it's not like shaky video all over the place. But could you incorporate maybe some examples of a demonstration? Other visuals might be, are there some really good statistics that you can glean? Is there a report that you can find that you might be able to share? Is there a website that you could share? So think about visuals. And I like to say it's not radio, it's more like TV. You'll hear that theme a lot as I talk about events. Think about what makes great television. Visuals, great content, sound bites, excitement, music, you pump it up with some music. All of those things, I think, will really help you create something that is more interesting. And then I think finally, the last tip that I have, and this is really hard to describe, but you know how sometimes you will watch a presenter and they're just talking, they're saying, well, this is what I'm doing, and we've had some great response, and totally not excited, right? Not excited at all about that, about what they're talking about. If the presenter isn't excited, why would the people who are attending be excited? It rubs off, right? If you're excited about something, someone else will be excited about it. So how do we get enthusiasm into our virtual meetings? First thing I will tell you is, do not write it down and do not memorize it. You do not want to have a script. What I want you to really do is talk to people. And it doesn't have to be perfect. No one speaks in perfect sentences all the time. What people do care about is the content, and are you excited about it? So go for that, that not memorized, more spontaneous kind of presentation and enthusiasm. The other way that enthusiasm really comes through is with facial expression. And I want you to think about that little camera that I'm seeing your faces on. Can I see how you feel about something? I can. If you're smiling and you're excited, by the way, if I smile, I know what happens. You smile, right? So I want you to think about the enthusiasm isn't just the energy level and the excitement. It's also, what is your face saying? It's, are you excited? So those are some of the tips that I think are really important when you're looking at creating a virtual event. And I've covered kind of a lot of information in a really short period of time. But if you think about what you're doing and you put some time and attention into it, you will have a much better virtual meeting than just getting on and really just kind of, I call it winging it. It's not a good idea to wing a virtual event. If anybody wants to reach out, I would encourage you, you can email us or call us. And what I'd love to do now is just talk about some of the things that you want to talk about and maybe get some questions. So Rosie, how do you want to do that? Do you want to pick questions, or should we ask people to raise their hand? What's the best way to do it?
Yep, I think either way is just fine. We've had a few come through on the chat, so I think maybe we'll start there. And then if there's additional questions, we're a small enough group. I think we're fine to just unmute. So first question came from Lisa, and it's about that Cisco event, the virtual drive-in.
Sure.
She asked, did Cisco send an award package to all the employees that included the popcorn and other items to keep them engaged, or was that something more of a suggestion, go and do it on your own?
Okay, so I do not believe that Cisco did. However, I will tell you, I have done others where people have sent a package. So for example, Michigan Celebrates Small Business. If any of you are aware of the 50 Companies to Watch, I sit on that board. And what we did was we actually sent packages to all of the winners with a big sticker that says, do not open, right? Because you don't want anybody to open it. And then what we had them do is at a certain point in the show, we asked them to open them up. I love the idea of sending something. Catholic Central did send, when they did their virtual fundraiser, what they did was they had people with gather in small groups, and mostly they were family people or people that were in their, I'm going to call it COVID bubble. And they actually sent packets to the host's home. And then the people who came got things like, candy and I don't know if they sent wine. I would highly recommend sending that if you can. And then they also sent like a Catholic Central hat or, some of the things that are branded. I'm not exactly sure what all was in that packet, but it was very successful. So I love sending something to people. I think it's a really great idea, and people feel special when they get something. So I would encourage, but it needs to be something unique. And I think something that ties to your brand. You don't want to just go send just anything. Okay. Other questions?
Yep, we have two more. Have you seen any really great virtual launch parties? So any specific launch party?
Okay. Are we talking about a product launch?
Amy, if you want to unmute yourself, I know this came from you.
Amy, unmute yourself. Tell me what kind of launch. Let me think with you.
For a career and life coaching.
Oh, interesting. I have seen interesting launch parties, but they've been for products where someone is launching a product. But let's think about that. What could we do for a launch party? Tell me what the content is, because I want to see if I can come up with something creative for you.
Yep. So right now my thought is kind of like in my research, like send out a signature drink, like create that, maybe bring in some clients that I work with to have discussion with. But essentially I work with youth, I work with adults, and then with organizations. I'm not niched down.
Yeah.
And so I just want to say, hey, E3, which stands for Equip, Empower, Elevate, is open for business. We're here for you. This is what we do. This is why we're unique, and those types of things. And to be honest, until about 6-8 weeks ago, I never heard of a virtual launch party. So it's like, okay.
All right, so there's a couple of things that I think I would do. One, I would tell you that you have to generate interest prior to that virtual launch party. I want you to start thinking about, there's this continuum of communication. So did anybody see the video that I did about this particular event? Did you go online? So I did a video that we shared. I think it's really a good idea. They have to be short, but to say, hey, do you know what Elevate, Equip is? Wow. Well, it's about, give them a little smattering, post it on Instagram, post it on your Facebook page, ask people to share it, get some buzz. So that's one of the things I would do prior to the launch. Then I think if I were you, I would start the launch with some storytelling. And I would, and I know you have to be careful because there's, privacy things but could you create 3 stories that you would start with that would be about, here's the person who came to us, here was the thing, here's what we did. And maybe you create those 3 little stories, and then you go on and you then open it up, do your content, do some sharing. I think in your case, it's hard to have a lot of visuals. So one of the things that you could do is do some of the things like I do, like those 2 examples of graphics that I showed you, create some of those so that you've got something and make it, like Equip, there's that could be a great visual. You could have a toolbox full of stuff that you put up and you talk about. So start to think visually about it. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. I saw a question and then it popped away.
Yep, Tova is asking if you have any ideas on how to do events for youth programs or keep them engaged.
Well, so here's the one thing I will tell you about youth. They're used to this. They tend to be more, into virtual than perhaps some of us who are my age. With youth, I think a big piece of it has to be interactivity. So I would suggest games where you maybe a pop quiz that you put up. I love the idea of having them share a story, give them a chance to raise their hand. But I think the more activity that you can do with youth, I think the better. I also would limit the time. Think about like where we say the average adult 10 minutes. What I will tell you is for youth, cut that in half. You have to change the activity every 5 minutes. And I actually know that some teachers who in their classrooms do that. The other thing I think that would be really interesting with youth is, could you also incorporate music? I think kids respond really well to some things like that. A character that you bring in who might be sort of your mascot. Kids love those sorts of things, but visual, auditory, keep it short, interactivity. Off the top of my head, that'd be some of the stuff I would recommend. Anybody else?
There's just 2 more. Wade he runs a draw club for kids, and they're curious, Wade, if you want to unmute yourself too, if there's more you want to explain, but they're asking about the unique links. And is that event specific? Is it for a person specifically? If you want to share some more, Wade.
All right, so for example, you got a unique link that Rosie sent out to click on this. If you don't have that link, you can't join this Zoom meeting. So I'm talking about, like a Facebook Live is not, you just kind of put it out there. Now, right. I'm not saying that's bad. I mean, you may want to do that. I'm just saying you may want to think about, though, do you need that extra security? If you don't care, then I would say go to a Facebook Live event for kids and do something like that in that medium. But I do know, especially with corporations, they're very particular about security, partially because they don't want competitors to know what they're saying to their salespeople or to their distributors. So security becomes more important. If it's something that really you can have more of a mass audience for, it's not as important.
We send out a unique link for the specific event that we do with the Draw Club for Kids. It's a 2-hour thing on Fridays that we do. There's a couple different sessions, and it is starting to grow online. And what I am concerned about, or what we're kind of concerned about, is since my wife pitched a little while ago and made some money for us to grow, we've had a lot of folks wanting to partner or work with us and so on. And as we send out links for an event, we don't want like families sending that to 15 other kids. And I didn't know if there was like a unique identifier for the link that you send to someone, so that once they're in, there's no more links of that variety coming.
So I will tell you, and this is where you might get some help with Event Nation on doing this. So I direct a church choir, and they have been doing seminars since we aren't able to sing right now, which is very disappointing to me. So they've been doing seminars for choir directors, and so they send me a link, and it is a unique link to me. They know if I'm in that link, and if more than one person use, and you are paying for it, they know. So I'm going to tell you, I'm not the expert on that, but I do know that that is an issue. Is if you want to really keep it to the people who have registered, that unique link and building it, and there's where you need some technical expertise. One of my guys is probably way better at this than I am, but I would agree with you. And the other thing is too, you've developed something now that you want to hold on to, right? And you don't want competitors stealing your idea and doing a knockoff of it. So I would really seriously think about how you create, some security in there.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Cynthia, last question in the chat box. This is from Lisa, and she's asking about budgeting. She owns a training and development company, and how do you begin to plan a budget for these types of things?
Yeah, and I'm going to tell you, so Lisa, this is all over the board. I mean, part of it is you have to look at, we're doing one right now with a company that does training for new moms. And so we've put together a package for them for how to create these sessions. A lot of it is based on, there's a couple of things. How long, like how many hours of this, right? Who have you developed all of the content? And do we need to develop graphics? Who's going to actually, is it going to be you talking? Are we going to have to, create narrative? I mean, there's all these kind of elements that go into it, but anyone can, if you have an outline, most producers like myself would look at that outline and would be able to tell you a budget range based on what we see for content. And the other thing I would tell you is that you don't need to overproduce. Sometimes people, now I sound like I'm talking out of two sides here, where I say it has to have production value. There's production value and there's production value. You don't want to overproduce it or underproduce it. You want good content, you want good audio, you want great visuals, but you don't have to go crazy with things like animation that adds a lot of cost, or travel to locations that adds a lot of cost. So it's really kind of a formula where you take all the elements of production and you kind of say it's going to take 2 hours to shoot and 4 hours for graphics, and there's numbers associated with it. But don't be afraid to explore it.
Yeah, we've been exploring motion graphic video just because it doesn't require one of us to be on camera right now, or it's a little easier to produce.
Well, and I will tell you, so when the pandemic hit, I have crews that travel all over the country every week.
Mm-hmm.
There would be weeks when we would have crews in 3 states. All of a sudden you can't travel, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what we have discovered is and I've got animators on staff, but our animation business went way up because we couldn't go out to locations and do that. And there's actually some advantages also to animation, and there's 2D, there's 3D, there's 4, I mean, there's all levels of it. but it also is kind of timeless. We call them explainer videos. Explainer videos, it's not like hairstyles are going to change or people's clothing is going to change, and they are easier to update in some ways. So I can see why you might want to think about that.
Yeah, thank you very much for your time and great presentation.
Oh, well, thank you. So, if anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out. And, you know, I make this offer to everyone. I'm happy to chat with you about what you're doing, maybe give you some ideas. Sometimes we will say to people, you really can do this on your own. Sometimes we'll tell people, you know, you might want to think about getting some help. But, you know, don't be afraid to explore it. The people who are making the moves into this and doing it well are getting a lot of views and making a lot of connections. And virtual meetings are definitely here to stay.
They sure are. Cynthia, thank you so much for all the information. I know I certainly learned a lot, and thank you to everyone who joined us early this morning on this cold morning here in Michigan. But thank you. Appreciate all of your time, and please reach out to Cynthia if you have questions.
All right. Have a
good day.
wonderful day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.